We are going to start. Please have a seat, ladies and gentlemen. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Honorable members of parliament, esteemed panelists on my side, Mr. Sakir, and those who are joining us online, we have Mr. John, Mrs. Anika, and the others. Distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us this morning on the 9th Forum of Parliamentarians Implementing Integrity. The Forum of Parliamentarians has been hosted in conjunction with every conference of state parties to the UNCAC as one of the flagship events of the Global Organization of Parliamentarians Against Corruption, GOPEC. This year, we are very fortunate to jointly organize the forum with our long-standing partner, UNODC Regional Office for Southeast Asia and Pacific. My name is Mardani Ali Sera. I'm the Secretary of GOPEC Southeast Asia Regional Chapter and Vice Chairperson of the Committee of the Interparliamentary Cooperation of the Indonesian House of Representatives. I am pleased and honored to serve as a moderator for this discussion this morning, along with our colleague, the Secretary of GOPEC, Mr. John Hyde, who will be joining us online. Distinguished delegate, enacting anti-corruption and ensuring its effectiveness implementation through parliamentary oversight are the key component in translating UNCAC commitment into national action. These parliamentary roles are becoming even more significant during the COVID-19 pandemic, with our country mobilizing their national recovery plans, relief packages, and vaccinations. The risk of corruption may follow. Emergency and crisis create a favorable condition for corruption to thrive, creating a challenge to national governance. As parliamentarians are essentials to uphold democracy and good governance, it is crucial to fully implement their mandate during a crisis, ensuring that pandemic relief are not looted and that are properly reach the most vulnerable people. Our panel today will focus on engagement of parliamentarians and the role they can play to advance the implementation of the UNCAC and UNGAS declaration. It is thus important to ask how to be better engage Parliament and what are the strategies needed to achieve national holistic integrity. Are innovative practices to achieve effective anti-corruption framework adopted by Parliament in the wake of pandemic. Is there any technical assistance available for parliamentarians to address these common challenges? These questions will be covered in today's discussion. But before we proceed to the discussion, allow me to invite the GOPEC Secretary, Mr. John Hyde, who will be the online moderator to deliver his welcoming note. Mr. Hyde, the screen is yours.
Terima kasih, Pak Ali. I'm delighted to be joining you virtually, I guess representing a number of our parliamentary members and others involved with GOPAC who have not been able to join COSP9 this year in Sharm El-Sheikh. but I am delighted that online we have a number of important parliamentary colleagues and guests, such as from Cambodia, parliamentarian Mr. Akun, to our Cambodian friends. And I'm delighted that our long-standing partnership with UNODC is being represented here today by the Anti-Corruption Advisor for Southeast Asia and the Pacific, Ms. Annika Wythes, and as GOPAC Secretary for Oceania as well. We're joined later on from former Palau legislator and now media owner Leilani Raklay. I'm also delighted to see on the podium my good friends, Vice President Dr. Fadli Zon from GOPAC Indonesia and Honourable Shakil Shabir from GOPAC Kenya, who is also the chair of the GOPAC Audit Committee. And of course, my very good friend, Dr. Carlos Alberto Perez Cuevas from GOPAC Mexico. So I welcome all our online participants, and I now hand back to our in-room moderator, Dr. Mardani Ali Sera. Terima kasih.
Thank you very much, Mr. John, for your brief introduction and engaging this meeting. So let us comment on the panel discussions by inviting our first speakers, Honorable Dr. Fadli Zon, the Vice Chair of GOPAC and the President of the CPEC. Dr. John is currently serving as the Chair of Inter-Parliamentary Cooperation Committee, the House of Representatives of Indonesia. We are fortunate to have Dr. Zon with us today to open the discussion by sharing with us the CPEC push for legislative openness reform in the region. Before we proceed, allow me to inform the PLU that the time allocation for speakers is 5 minutes, and I will remind the speaker if they reach their maximum speaking time. Without further ado, I would like to give the floor to Dr. Zon.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator, my colleague, Dr. Mardani Ali Sera, John Hyde, and other panelists. Here, Mr. Shakil Shabir, my colleague. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Peace be upon us all. It's a pleasure on behalf of GOPAC and Southeast Asian Regional Chapter, CPEC, to join you in this panel. I would like to extend also my appreciation to UNODC, Southeast Asia and the Pacific for their long-standing partnership and collaboration to strengthen parliamentary roles and engagement in the fight against corruption. And fellow delegates, corruption thrives in an environment of secrecy and opaque bureaucratic processes with lack of accountability in the use of public resources. So it is not by accident that one of the most famous metaphors in anti-corruption is an adage, sunlight is the best disinfectant, popularized by US Supreme Court Junior Justice Louis Brandeis in 1914, highlighting the importance of openness in public affairs. So since then, shining a spotlight on the works of those who are in power, moving out from the culture of secrecy into openness, has been pertinent to anti-corruption strategies. The openness reform is indeed imperative to build accountability and trust, promote inclusiveness, as well as provide access and collaboration in decision-making process. So we believe that parliaments can be strong drivers of such reforms, and that an open parliament is essential to narrow the gap between legislatures and those affected by public decisions. In line with GOPEC's Global Task Force, one of the focuses of CPEC is to promote to more robust legislative openness framework. So broadly, we support parliaments to contribute promoting the legislative openness reform in two ways. First, parliaments can influence openness reforms that are being advanced by the governments. This includes ratifying relevant legislation, devising needed legal measures, and securing input from citizens. For example, the Parliament of Malaysia has been advancing the government's open data initiatives through public sector open data portal, developed guidelines for its implementation in 2015. Second, by committing to the open parliament initiative in their own legislative bodies, developing open parliament plans through co-creation with civil society. So in Southeast Asia, the first parliament to have done such step is the Indonesian House of Representatives, which declare the Open Parliament Indonesia in August 2018. So through that strong commitment, the Indonesian Parliament develops a national action plan every 2 years, following a civil society consultative process. The current plan of 2022-2024 contains 6 commitments to be implemented by 22 working units involving 7 civil society organizations and international institutions in its development. So the broad commitments include, first, increasing public participation in the legislative process through CLEG online platform. That's our name for that online platform. Second, public access to digital parliamentary information through open data. Third, strengthening the information system for MPs. Fourth, conducting a regular policy dialogue through multi-stakeholder forums. And the fifth one is promoting ICT innovation in the parliament. So the push for open parliament is in line with Article 10 and 13 of the UNCAC. We also commend the recent 2021 Memorandum of Parliamentary Engagement by Open Government Partnership, emphasizing parliamentary roles in achieving openness reforms. So parliaments must be strategically empowered into committing to openness core pillars, citizen participation, transparency, and access to information, utilization of technology, ethics, and probity. So, colleagues, dear delegates, the impact of this legislative openness reform depends on the existence of other enabling factors, such as political will, a free and independent media, a robust civil society, effective accountability, and the sanctioning mechanism. So hence, in Southeast Asia, where the status of democratic consolidation highly varies, it is important to ensure an effective democracy building process in the region as a prerequisite of accountable and transparent governance. So this is very important because without democracy, there will be no substantial participatory process, and even openness will not translate into stronger accountability. So CPEC plans to reinforce our work with intergovernmental and interparliamentary institutions in the region, including ASEAN and AIPA. AIPA is ASEAN Interparliamentary Assembly, to ensure that Southeast Asian ways of consensus are built upon the commitment of transparency and accountability. So we call upon fellow Southeast Asian parliamentarians to strive for a much more representative, open, transparent, accessible, accountable, and effective legislative body in their respective countries. With almost 100 members across 7 countries and 4 national chapters in Indonesia, Malaysia, Cambodia, and Timor-Leste, we are eager to facilitate information exchange, engage in reciprocal learning across region, and foster strategic partnership in improving institutional capacity and legislative openness reform. So let's work together to break this culture of corruption and let the sunlight in to help ensure that parliaments are accountable and trustworthy for the benefit of all people. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. John, for your insightful and important call to advance legislative transparency, accountability, and increase public participation, and also the openness in the region of Southeast Asia. Now let us reflect our current state, opportunities, and challenge in advancing parliament engagement by exploring the experience and perspective from other GOPAC region. For a second discussion, I hope we can hear some Latin American perspective from Dr. Carlos Alberto Perez Cuevas, the Vice Chair of the GOPEC and the President of GOPEC Latin America. Dr. Cuevas will join us virtually to elaborate parliamentary oversight in Latin America to ensure that no one left behind during the pandemic. Without further ado, Dr. Cuevas, the screen is yours.
Thank you very much. There are parliamentarians and GOPAT around the world, and the representatives from different international bodies, colleagues of this panel. I'm delighted to be in this 9th Parliamentarians Forum, which is part of the 9th World Conference of the State Parties of the United Nations Convention Against Corruption, which bring together to exchange views on how now to leave any on behind during the pandemic, and on the significance of parliamentary oversight in the world, in my case, in America. COVID, health, and corruption. But on global and regional scale, the Transparency International report highlights the link between corruption in the health sector and the limited capacity of the states to face the outbreak of COVID-19. The pandemic highlighted the importance of investment in health to avoid the weakening of democracies, and it also made evident the need for oversight in those investment expenses and action. With regular purchases, overprices, ventilators, and even bodies bags more than 1,000% of their normal value. Latin America is not only fighting against the pandemic, but against corruption. The pandemic has affected Latin America. The health crisis caused by the coronavirus diseases has become worse due to a wave of corruption and profit, which added to the lack of vaccines, how the most affected are always the poor, the marginalized, in our case, the developing countries. It is here that parliamentary oversight becomes particularly relevant. As parliamentarians, we can contribute to the creation of laws, which address the deficiencies we observed during the pandemic, particularly in public purchases. And the government authorities obligation of reporting back Beijing transparent with the management of economic resources, as not leaving out anyone from programs health projects. This represents a great and real opportunity to fight corruption in the region with effective outcome. Nevertheless, data from the Global Corruption Barometer in Latin America and the Caribbean reveal that most citizens hold that their governments do not do enough to face corruption, and that corruption levels increased during the last 12 months in all the region. Latin America tends to have the rankings of region with the highest received indexes of corruption. It is estimated that corruption costs $220 billion a year to the region, the equivalent of Peru's GDP or Germany's international reserves. During the pandemic, countries were forced to dramatically increase their expenses in many areas, particularly in health issues. Challenge for America. A good management of the pandemic implies a great challenge for the government in the region, which involves attending the needs generated by the health emergency, as well as fighting the many opportunities of corruption. In this regard, Government needs to effectively attend to the people and at the same guarantee transparency conditions in the hearing and public purchasing processes, both at health and urgency level and in the economy recovery area. Parliamentary work is key here because it's contributing much focus on creating and modifying rules to make them more effective, as well as adopting good practices and advanced technological tools to fight corruption. Database technologies most used to provide more publicity and transparency to the emergency processes and public purchasing, as well as the use of real-time allocation and tracking mechanisms based on results, and even algorithms that automatically transmit the call for making urgency offers the registered supplies due to the pandemic. Permanent involvement in the organized civil society. It is necessary for this that governments generate the availability of open data. It's necessary input to guarantee the civil society and the control organism have the most effective mechanisms to fight against corruption in Latin America. This is one of the biggest challenges in the region. And obviously, there are many actions we can take to try to eradicate corruption in our countries, and the contribution of parliamentarians must be increasingly effective and efficient. The following years will pose great challenges. With regards to GOPAC Latin America, we have come to a turning point is we have initiated dialogues to integrate parliamentarians from the United States of America and from Canada. So we will be creating a new GOPAC in the Americas, South America, Central America, and North America in GOPAC of the Americas. We shall do the same with the permanent work congresses, parliaments, and legislative assemblies at the American continent involvement with governments, international instances. Organized civil society is key for the joint efforts in parliamentarians. There is much to be done, but we will keep working on a going basis. I wish you the best of success in your war against corruption in all the world. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Fuepas, for your insightful perspective and information regarding the GOPAC chapter Latin America. And now let me proceed the discussion by inviting our third panelist, who is present with us today, fellow parliamentarian from National Assembly of the Republic of Kenya, Honorable Shakil Sabir Ahmed. He is the chair of APNEC Kenya, and he will share with us his perspective on building blocks of governments and parliament unique roles in addressing contemporary challenges in anti-corruption realms. Without further ado, I would like to invite Dr. Shakil. The floor is yours.
I'm not a doctor yet. I'm hoping to be. Firstly, good morning. To panelists, and I think good afternoon to you in Thailand, John, and good morning in Brazil. Parliamentarians are the conscience of the people. Everybody tells us, and we know that the basis of democracy is based upon the three arms of government. The French Revolution and others brought out the fourth arm. The fourth arm being the civil society, press, and others. What really, the first point that I want to make, out of these four arms of government, the only arm of government that is consistently and constantly evaluated methodologically every 5 years is Parliament. Parliament is the conscience of the people. Parliament is the choice of the people. Parliament is the people's instrument in government. We are the oversight. we are meant to be working with the other two, but oversighting them, not doing the policy work. However, it is extremely critical that Parliament, in its role as the people's representative and custodian, plays an integral part in the fight against corruption. Unfortunately, over time, I mean, people have expect great integrity from parliamentarians. They expect so much. You know, those who are parliamentarians will tell you that at the beginning when you're elected, you're the most popular. Within the first year, you're the most hated. In Kenya, we lose 75% of parliamentarians at every election. For some reason, I'm in the third term. So somewhere along the line, the people do have a say. What bothers us? Firstly, we as parliamentarians ourselves must ensure that we are carrying ourselves with integrity and we are fighting corruption at each level. The worst corruption that parliamentarians come across or sometimes be involved in indirectly because they're under state capture is state capture. When they are now captured by the executive or sometimes by the activist judiciary and sometimes by both of them, then there is what we call budgetary controls that you're meant to have. You know, I don't know other parliamentarians, but Kenya before used to bring 2 feet of documents 5 days before and expect you to pass the budget. We've changed that budgetary process that Parliament will be involved throughout the budgetary process from the inception to the end. However, one of the biggest problems Parliament has, and we all have, is budgeted corruption. Now corruption has become so good. These guys in corruption, they corrupt in advance for 5 years. They're budgeting for bridges that are not going to take place. And you see, sometimes if you're not sharp as parliamentarians, you pass that budget. When you pass that budget, you've actually allowed them to do so. So I think what we are trying to do now, we are working very much on what is called the budgetary process, and that we want civil society and we want executive to come and talk to us. When we have budgeters, we don't want the minister to come and talk to us about the budget and budget policy statement. No. We want to know every single authority therein. For argument's sake, we have the anti-corruption, and then sometimes when they come to us, and because they come under the Attorney General's office, and the Attorney General tells them, okay, you sit at the back, I'll talk about it. But then when we have passed the budget, they don't get much of the funds. And they are literally, they say we have no vehicles, we have nothing, we're frustrated. So I think firstly, the building block must start with parliamentarians. We must demand, we must show by integrity, even if there are 5 of us, even if there are 10 of us, even if there are 20. And that's how it happens. You know, we say that we must do the best we can. GOPAC is our global body that we have got together with, APNAC, the African body, and the Asian CPAC. Okay. These are bodies of networked parliamentarians who have a desire and a passion. And we're sitting here with Fadili and others and our chairs, and then we have the passion to fight this at our level. What actually hurts me most of all is, although we recognize ourselves and our capacities, what hurts me most of all, and this is, I've brought this up in other things, in other sessions, is that the United Nations, COSP, and others, Council of State or whatever, COSP, I don't know what it stands, I know what it stands for, I've forgotten. State, something of state. Now, state parties. Now, what we are asking you about is, where does the parliamentarians come into this? Because they come here, I have my own case here, I've seen 15 members of the judiciary, the judges, and everybody sitting. Actually, none of them are here. And when they only will go to the main hall and sit there for a few minutes and whatever, and then they maybe go to other places. I'm just talking generally, not my own country. But the situation is that we must, as the United Nation, as a united front against corruption, we parliamentarians must demand to be part and parcel of the United Nations UNCAC process. Not as visitors, not as observers, not as sideshows like we are doing right now. We must demand that COSP must invite parliamentarians at the same time as they fight the executive. Judiciary 1/3, parliamentarians 1/3, executive 1/3. Let us also, these so-called conventions that we're talking about. Do you know I'm a parliamentarian now 15 plus years? I had 2 weeks before or 1 week before, they go into a small hotel and they start ticking. Have we done this? Yes. Have we done this? Yes. And some of times they're not there. We, the parliamentarians, are the servants of the people, not the executive, not the judiciary. Judiciary are the servants of the people after the parliament, who are the first lot. The judiciary come in as the professionals, the executive come in as the professionals. So the building block, the first building block that we must secure, and the first building block that we must work on hard, is to ensure that UNCAC and other anti-corruption conventions around the world recognize the role of parliaments as an integral part in the fight against corruption. Without parliamentarians, they are failing. And we don't want to fail. We don't want to be a talk shop. We want to be part and parcel. We are not saying the executive doesn't do their job. We are saying they're doing it, but they need us as much as we need them. And I think that is the one message that we would like. That is the main building block. The other building block, of course, is the issue of integrity with the people and working hand to hand with the executive and the legislature and the United Nations conventions and other conventions. Let us not also just go back with all those documents that we have. GoPac does a great job. We have been, John will tell you and Padili will tell you, the STAR initiative, we were part and parcel of that 15 in 2009. The beneficial interest, we were part and parcel of that. Grand corruption, illicit funding, all of these that they are coming on right now. We have been part and parcel of those thinking, part and parcel of the development of that particular agenda. Yes, they take it over. Now we have a STAR initiative somewhere, I think is in the United Kingdom, and they come and sit here and talk to us. But we do not see the problem. And when we go back to our country, we find the executive has taken roughshod. And they put on two organizations, one executive-based, one just to keep the United Nations happy, and both of them can't work. So I think, in Kenya, we have the stolen asset recovery, which is under the Anti-Corruption Board, which should be the right way. Then we have something new that was put up, called the Asset Recovery Agency, which is now supported by the United Nations. The Asset Recovery Agency has seven of these members who are investigators. The anti-corruption has 120. The 7 are paid on the basis of United Nations support. The 120, the ones who actually do the work, are set aside. So that is the sort of thing that we need to correct. And the first thing, Mr. Moderator, sir, and my dear brother, I hear the United Nations that have certain Council of State Parties have already started discussing that they would like to knock out the NGOs from this particular thing. It's a great shame. We are not NGOs. We as COSOP, we as the GoPac, we as the network of parliamentarians must be the partners of the United Nations process at the highest level. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Shakil. By your
interesting and attractive presentations.
Thank you, sir.
For all delegates who are attending in this meeting, we have already passed the brochures which you like to see, and if you intended to join, you can join by see the information and the brochure. Let us go further by inviting our next speaker, Ms. Annika White, Regional Anti-Corruption Advisor at the UNODC Regional Office for Southeast Asia and Pacific. I think it is best for us to hear directly from her about key programs and UNODC partnership in promoting access to information. Without further ado, I invite Ms. Annika. The screen is yours.
Thank you, Honorable Ali Sera. Distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, colleagues and friends, a warm bula venaka to GOPAC parliamentarians and participants from all corners of the globe, both in the room and virtually. I wish to thank GOPAC for inviting me on behalf of UNODC to be part of this distinguished panel on implementing integrity. Corruption is not only a crime, but a moral and the ultimate betrayal of public trust, as said by the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres, calling on everyone to work together and stamp out the global scourge in all its forms. Now, during the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic, we must continue to recover better with integrity. When we look at the challenges and measures to prevent and fight corruption and to strengthen international cooperation, parliamentarians have a strong and important voice in this that indeed must be heard. Indeed, in recognizing the importance of political will, as was said, and leadership at all levels in addressing corruption, leaders to champion integrity, advocate and implement anti-corruption practices. As was mentioned in the UN Convention Against Corruption, we have Article number 10, Article number 13, but allow us to also draw on Sustainable Development Goal number 16. This includes the explicit recognition of the need to combat corruption in order to promote peaceful and inclusive societies for sustainable development, provide access to justice for all, and build effective, accountable, and inclusive institutions at all levels. In this sense, SDG 16 is both an outcome and an enabler of sustainable development. It recognizes that peace, justice, and inclusion are critical enablers to achieving all other SDGs, be it ending poverty, ensuring education, or conservation of the oceans, and therefore also referring to it as enabling goal, recognizing that without peace, justice, and inclusion, the other SDGs may be difficult, if not impossible, to achieve. As was said, parliamentarians are part of the solution. You play a key role legislatively with your oversight role in progressing anti-corruption efforts. As was said by Dr. Zong, you play such an important role in safeguarding also COVID-19 relief packages and addressing the challenges posed, but also now in taking the words of the Conference of the States Parties and indeed the UNCAC political declaration forwards. We really need to have concise and action-orientated measures in order to be able to work together to address corruption. In terms of the next slide, if we turn to this, if we could. Thank you. Here on the slide, you can see some of the partnerships that UNODC has had the pleasure of having with GOPAC Oceania. In terms of workshops with Kiribati, the Cook Islands, Nauru, Niue, Samoa, and Tonga. We've had such an honor with working with parliamentarians across the region and indeed beyond. You may see some familiar faces up there of colleagues and friends. And in going further, if we could go to the next slide, please. In drawing also on, as was just mentioned, the role that the media plays. Here in partnering also not only with GOPAC, but the role that the media plays in drawing also attention to, be it the UNCAC, and indeed now having this declaration that is a concise action-orientated framework that we can use to push also the agenda not only of governments, as was just said, but also to ensure, as is the next slide, talking about the action that legislatures play in addressing corruption, and as is the topic of this panel, to really look at accountability and what measures can be used in terms of trying to ensure that we do better. For the next slide, I'd also like to turn to, of course, the important role that UNODC has and has had the honor of working with CPAC in the region. Some of you will be very familiar with my colleague Francesco, who is also online, and also with other colleagues who have dialed in. So thank you very much for being part of this. I would also like to maybe highlight in this framework that, as we can see here, as we go through the slides, the right to information was highlighted as a key angle. And I think it is indeed the role of parliaments, as is an example here, to be able to demonstrate and show that you are leading by example and making as much information publicly available as possible, also now during COVID. And even for the next slide, where it is indeed parliamentarians themselves, be it constituency development funds or other funds that are received, to be accountable. It's a good practice to indeed practice as you preach. And I think in Vanuatu, we have 2 members of parliament who have done exactly this. And it is complete accountability for any citizen to be able to see clearly what it is that their members of parliament are doing with these particular funds that are indeed constituency development funds. And be it for roads or be it for schools, it is all clear in a framework that is provided to them. I'd like to finish also by drawing on the UNGAS, and this is because it was mentioned previously. Here it indeed is shaping the global anti-corruption agenda for the next decade. The Conference of States Parties to UNCAC also provides a platform where we're advancing these bold and innovative approaches. We're scaling best practices and we're developing new standards and mechanisms. We're changing with the times, and parliamentarians are very much at the forefront of this. As we go forwards, we need to have indeed innovative but also flexible and forward-looking people at the forefront as we seek to implement UNCAC, as we seek to really try and achieve the 2030 development agenda, also SDG number 16. In Kiribati, there is a beautiful word that is often used in the Pacific called taniwa, and it basically means sail and canoe, and is reflected in the way in which we sail across the ocean, indeed in hard and challenging ways. And I think in symbolizing this, I encourage all of us to set sail as well, whereby corruption is indeed serious in undermining good governance, but it also the very fabric of our society. This is what it undermines. It's everywhere. And to be honest, it is taking us further off course now with COVID-19 to achieving the SDGs. So now is a time where we really have to course correct, and we have to stop corruption now by recovering better with integrity. And these are my last words, and I thank you very much for the opportunity of being on this distinguished panel and saying a few remarks. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. White, for a very long cooperation between the UNODC and the GOPEC. And, let us move to our last panelist of the day, is Ms. Leilani Reclay, representing the Pacific Anti-Corruption Journalist Network, who will share her presentation how parliamentarians should best partnering with media on anti-corruption effort and advocacy. Ms. Rivka, the screen is yours. Ms. Rivka, I cannot hear your voice.
Island Times newspaper. I'm a former governor of Imalite State, and I had 8 years as a public official. And since then, since my retirement from public office, I have been back to media, and right now I'm writing as well as publishing the paper on a regular basis here in Palau. Talking about integrity and corruption, my experience in the public office really made me see the impact corruption had on people, especially repressing development, keeping the people from moving forward a lot in their daily lives. Unfortunately, many of the constituents, many of the regular community members, they're not aware of what corruption is doing to them. And they're not aware of the corrupt actors within their communities. They keep on re-electing them into office, and they keep on making their decisions on their behalf. So seeing that and now coming back to the private sector and being involved in the media, we look at ways to see how we can help lift the people, give them the opportunity to better themselves. And to do that, how do we make corruption something that people are aware of? How do we fight that? And it's, there are good laws in place to try to, put these people who are doing illegal things, who are in office, who are able to take actions that are counterproductive to their constituents. But it's not enough. If people do not know what's going on, if people think it's all right, or if they've been conditioned to think it's all right, nothing's changed. So I see our role as a media in helping to bring those information, not only to bring the bad actors out, but also to make people aware of what's going on in their community. And before I was even in the public office, we didn't really see this as a problem. But now that I've seen what's going on, we see those actors are not only affecting the lives of people now, but they're making decisions that limits the future of the young people, impact the decisions that they will have to make for themselves in the future. So more than ever, it's very important that the media play a role in bringing out this information. We've been very fortunate in the last 3 years, 2018, 2019, and 2020, and even this year, to have had the partnership of UNCAC, PAC News, and Australia to help the media also learn, what are the corrupt practices, what practices have been going on that we have not been aware that they are corrupt. We looked at our laws, we looked at the actors in the government that we can work together to raise awareness about corruption and to bring those people who are doing these activities that repress development of the people to come to fore. For example, we've worked very closely with the Office of Special Prosecutor. We've worked with them following the cases that they've brought to the court. Usually, the cases that they bring to court would be about public officials that have done something in office that they're not supposed to do. So misconduct in public office, violation of code of ethics, fraud, misuse of government property. And it's been very successful working with them and trying to bring out this information to the public, bringing these people up to the public eye as well. But I think more importantly, it's sending a message to all the other corrupt actors out there that they are being looked at, and and some of these behaviors are not acceptable. This year alone, we've had 2 governors convicted of misconduct in public office, code of ethics, fraud, and other related corruptions, corrupt practices. We've had other government officials as well. So it's very important. Media has to work together with the government agencies to bring about more transparent government and fight corruption. It's not something that only the government can tackle. It's not only thing that the media can tackle, but we all have to work together.
Thank you very much, Mr. Leclerc, for a broad perspective on how media and journalists can support the fight against corruption. Ladies and gentlemen, after having reached an insightful presentation from all our esteemed panelists, now I would like to hear some thought from representative of GOPEC delegation before proceeding to the open discussion in the time allows. First, we are fortunate to have representation from Cambodia Parliament and GOPEC Cambodia to share some brief thought on the role of parliaments in advancing integrity and ensuring the effectiveness of UNCAC implementation. I will invite Honorable Ok Damri, member of the Cambodian Parliament, who is joining us virtually. Honorable Damri, the screen is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ali Sera, Dr. El-Fayrouz Room, Chairman of the CPAC and Chair of the Committee of the Interparliamentarian Cooperation of the House of the Representatives of the Republic of Indonesia. And hello to John Hyde, too, our former friends. I would like to extend my sincere thanks and recognize your hard work from all the staff of the GOPEC, CPAC to work hard for organize this good conference. We are aware that the many countries now are still suffering from the COVID-19, but the rate of infections begin to slow down. In some hard-hit areas, in some countries, cities and states are starting to slowly down and reopen business, public area, and more, and the number of COVID-19 cases are then and now decrease, and plateaus as a result of being vaccinated. Excellencies, lady parliamentarians, member of GOPEC, the National Assembly of the Kingdom of Cambodia, on behalf of the legislative body, has a strong commitment to combat corruption. In the spirit of the fighting against corruption, the National Assembly has adopted the several law anti-corruption, which was promulgated in 2010. The Cambodian Parliament has examined the draft law and the proposals of law related to the field of investigation, purge, and anti-corruption submitted by National Assembly's Central Committee. We have initiated idea, proposed law or proposed amendment to law, organized consultation, seminar, and work presentations relate to the mission of area of responsibility and cooperate in reviewing drafts law or proposals and various committee as assigned by National Assembly. In order to achieve the goal of the United Nations Convention Against Corruption and Sustainable Development Plan 2015 to 2030, Cambodia has sent out the goal of the promoting peace, sustainable social development, and universal access to justice and build effectiveness institutions with accountability and at all levels. To achieve the goal, Cambodia has targeted the following issues related to anti-corruption, such as by 2030, Cambodia has to reduce the flow of weapons and illicit financings, strengthen the demand and return the loss of assets, the effects of the corruption, and fighting against all forms of organized crime. Reduce the crime of bribery, all form and corruption. Establish effective accountability and transparency in institutions at all levels. Ensure comprehensive responsiveness, participation, and represent in the decisions at all levels. On behalf of the GOPAC member, I would like to express my full support to the 9th Forum of Parliamentarians today, which manifests the promoting solidarity, understanding, cooperation, and close relation among parliamentarians. In closing, I would like to extend my sincere thanks to all who cares of the 9th Forum Parliamentarian for the organizing social forum, and we are strongly hope that we will possibly join the physical meeting at next time. Thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you very much, Honorable Damri. Now I would like to invite Mr. Ashley America from Nigeria. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator, panelists, speakers, distinguished participants. Yes, my name is Ashley Emenike. I'm representing Senator Solomon Abdukwari, who is the chairman of the Senate Committee on Anti-Corruption and Financial Crimes in Nigeria. And I'm also here in my capacity as the executive director of GOPAC Nigeria. As you all know, Nigeria is a country of 200 million people. We have 3 arms of government and also have them layered at the federal, then 36 states and 774 local government councils. I'm very happy to announce that GOPAC Nigeria is carrying out one of the most ambitious GOPAC chapter programs today. Currently, we have registered as members the Senate President and the complete leadership of the Senate and the House of Representatives. And we have also registered 32 out of 36 state chapters. And these state chapters are chaired by the speakers of the state houses of assembly. And between now and June next year, GOPAC state chapters have been mandated to register at the local governments because it is important to be able to mainstream activities from the federal down to the communities. And that has always been one of our challenges. I'm also happy to inform you that this is the second time running that we have been invited as part of Nigerian delegation, because we made it clear to them that conversations on issues to fight corruption cannot happen without the legal frameworks. So they have consistently put us on the delegation, Nigeria's delegation, because when they come here, as our board member, Honorable Shabir, had mentioned, you have conversations, you cannot legalize those conversations, domesticate the conventions, you have actually not achieved anything. And I'm so happy to inform you that based on our commitments to the UNCAC as a nation, my senator, who has carried out certain private member bills that have to do with our international commitments, include the Whistleblower Bill, Witness Protection, Money Laundering Prohibition Act, and we're also looking at amending our constitution. We're already amending it. We've submitted memoranda because witness protection has to do a lot with in our constitution. But one thing, I don't know how other chapters are seeing it. We are very wary of creating new institutions because that adds a burden, administrative burden on our nation. What we're looking at is expanding the mandates of existing institutions. And then we have also carried out vigilant oversight on the anti-corruption agencies. We have developed a template for them to report on their activities. We've carried out interactive sessions with the fintech operators, so we're quite busy, quite ambitious. I'm very happy and proud to be here today. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you very much, Mr. Aslam Merike. Ladies and gentlemen, it is very honored to have this such fruitful discussion, but due to our limited time, let we move to the last sessions, the concluding remarks. Dr. Nasser Al-Sen will be giving the concluding remarks by online. Dr. Nasser, the screen is yours.
Good morning, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Okay. Good morning. I've been listening to this very nice interventions for our 9th Parliamentary Forum alongside conference. So I'd like, on behalf of our executive committee or our board, although also in spite of our Fadli Zone, our vice chair sitting here, I'd like to join you and him in welcoming everybody. I listened to the interventions on this morning, and I see there are so many practices that we could learn from, starting from our brother zone from Indonesia. I like the policies they adopt and the 6 points straightforward for the open parliament in Indonesia. And so on, we went through Latin America and to our friend Shakil from Kenya, when he mentioned that 75% of parliamentarians will never make it again. It means how much there is an anger among the people against MPs. And so on, we went to Cambodia, we went to Nigeria, and we've been through so many practices, including Leila, as a journalist, her intervention on how to gain the public trust, as it is, some wordings were put on the United Nations. What I think, listening to these experiences, that there are so many lessons that we will always learn. But at the end of the day, if we as GOPAC, as an organization, do not give something in hand for parliamentarians around.
We cannot hear your voice, Dr. Sen. Dr. Hassan, we cannot hear your voice. Maybe you unmute first. Go on, Dr. Hassan. We're waiting a little bit time to Dr. Hassan to continue his concluding remarks.
Sorry.
Okay, loud and clear.
This is one of the examples of a manual that we produced in GOPAC, but this is in Arabic. But we have other, version in English and other languages. These manuals enable our members and colleagues and all our concerned parties who would like to work with us as an organization to guide us step by step on how to make sure that your country is implementing this nice convention for anti-corruption in your country. Now, in this conference, I know there is an official delegation been talking for a couple of days in the same place. But at the end of the day, you as a parliamentarian will have to hold your government responsible of implementing such convention on anti-corruption. We have 6 other manuals on how do you audit the budget of your country. That's another manual. How you check on the anti-money laundering practices. We have each manual is being produced with a specialized international organization. So the quality of the content is high quality. We in the Arab region, as ARPAC, part of GOPAC, recently we updated all these 7 manuals on recent data and figures, and we are going to publish them again. And other chapters of GOPAC are on the same process because it's a project of GOPAC. We have a manual on how to check on the revenues of the country professionally. We have a manual telling you how to work on parliamentary and political ethics. These issues are very hot, but if we don't do it properly, and if we don't do it through guidelines, we will waste a lot of our energy and our time. And I think our lesson of today that we have learned that we have to work together with others. We cannot work as parliamentarians to fight the corruption alone. Now we're working with the ODC for 9 years now alongside their COSP conference. We do this event, which is another good partner to us, which enabled us to produce this manual. By the way, they are our technical partner in producing this manual of UNCAC. You have to work with journalists, civil society. I am really shocked of what was read and spread on the media that non-government organizations and NGOs are not so welcomed on COSP. I hope this news are fake, and I hope it will be corrected, because you cannot fight corruption alone. That's a lesson that we learned, and we keep telling others. You have to put hands together with journalists, academics, lawyers, civil society, youth groups, any interested group in the civil society, and work together on a national effort. I have so many things to say, but I think it's a concluding remarks, and I would like to thank everybody who spoke on this panel today. And I think I learned a lot, and I think we all have learned a lot, but the most important that we carry something with us home. And this message of manuals, I am putting it to everybody, and it's available for those who are interested to seriously work to fight corruption on this holistic approach. Many thanks, and wish you the best. And regards from Kuwait. Today is Friday, is a nice holy day, and it is the beginning of winter in Kuwait. I hope you enjoy your weather there in Sharm el-Sheikh and back home. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Nasser Hussain, by your concluding remarks. Ladies and gentlemen, it is indeed an encouraging exchange view that we must continue to follow up. And it has been a great pleasure to lead this discussion. I would like to thank all the panelists, Mr. John Hyde, Dr. Padlizon, Dr. Carlos Alberto Perez Truefas, Honorable Shakir Sabil, Ms. Anika White, Ms. Leilani Reklai, the Cambodian delegations, the Nigeria, and the other distinguished delegates. Our anti-corruption effort do not stop here. GOPEC welcomes further collaboration and to address the most pressing and contemporary challenge of corruption. Thank you very much, and we hope to see you again in GOPAC future events and other opportunities. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Assalamu alaikum.